Gabriel Moreno's Rule of Life. 1. Every morning when saying my prayers, I will ask especially for the virtue of humility. 2. Every day I will hear Mass, say the Rosary, and read, besides a chapter of the Imitation, this rule and the annexed instructions. 3. I will take care to keep myself as much as possible in the presence of God, especially in conversation, so as not to speak useless words. I will constantly offer my heart to God, and principally before beginning any action. 4. I will say to myself continually, I am worse than a demon and deserve that hell should be my dwelling place. When I am tempted, I will add, what shall I think of this in the hour of my last agony? 5. In my room, never to pray sitting when I can do so on my knees or standing. Practice daily little acts of humility, like kissing the ground, for example. Desire all kinds of humiliations, while taking care at the same time not to deserve them. To rejoice when my actions or my person are abused and censured. 6. Never to speak of myself unless it be to my own defects or faults. 7. To make every effort by the thought of Jesus and Mary to restrain my impatience and contradict my natural inclinations. To be patient and amiable even with people who bore me. Never to speak evil of my enemies. 8. Every morning before beginning my work, I will write down what I have to do, being very careful to distribute my time well, to give myself only to useful and necessary business, and to continue it with zeal and perseverance. I will scrupulously observe the laws of justice and truth, and have no intention in all my actions save the greater glory of God. 9. I will make a particular examination twice a day on my exercise of different virtues, and a general examination every evening. I will go to confession every week. 10. I will avoid all familiarities, even the most innocent, as prudence requires. I will never pass more than an hour in any amusement, and in general, never before 8 o'clock in the evening. Moreno, as we're going to talk about in the course of today's class, our next maple syrup episode, and also the beauty subset of our maple syrup history classes, is one of the most kind of like outspoken, obvious Catholic presidents in world history. You might even put him number one in terms of a man who unabashedly lived his Catholic faith. I just read to you from his rule these 10 guidelines, bullet point things that he tried to live his life by. These kind of like lodestars, points of interest, rails within which he aimed to live his life. And commentators that I've seen talk about this, commentators who make comment on this rule talk about its impressiveness, because if you look at, like, for instance, I love the Benedictines. We talk about the Benedictines often in this class, did a whole episode on St. Benedict, Ora et Labora. A lot of the great rules, like St. Benedict's rule, are associated with a particular monastic community. And this is just a guy. This is a guy, very, very devout man who asks himself basically the question, how do I pursue virtue? How do I live virtuously? And those 10 things, again, those 10 kind of like bullet points for him were daily examine, a daily kind of like focus on how to live his life. Moreno is the first president to consecrate a country officially to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. He does this on March 23rd, 1873. I will say, spoiler alert, because I'm going to talk about this in the course of this episode, but a lot of people maybe don't know this. Again, he's not a very well-known guy at all. Talk about like Catholic monarchs of recent times, Blessed Karl of Austria, the last emperor of Austria-Hungary, who takes over for Franz Josef at the end of 1916 during the Great War. A very, very holy man comes to mind. But even Catholics, Blessed Emperor Karl, he's like a little bit known. He's not as well known, I think, as he should be. Moreno is basically not well known at all. This Ecuadorian president from the mid-19th century. Spoiler alert, he's assassinated. That's going to be kind of the high point of our class today. And a lot of people say, in odium fide, assassinated because of his out-and-out stalwart Catholicism. He's assassinated 2 years after doing this consecration. A lot of people say it's the reason why. That he's officially, giving Ecuador over to God, and this is too much for his, opponents. First Catholic president in world history to consecrate his country to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And actually, A few decades after his death, the country will be consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of the Blessed Virgin Mary as well. Over the course of our standard episode after this introduction, in our normal classroom and all that, I'm going to read the entirety of this consecration in English in the middle of our class. But I want to just read in Spanish the first two chapters and the kind of conclusion of it. This part being actually what the Archbishop prayed after Moreno had made the consecration to the Sacred Heart of Jesus official. Señor, este es tu amado país. Siempre, Jesús mío, te reconoceremos como nuestro Dios. Que nunca apartemos la mirada de esta estrella de amor y misericordia, que brilla en medio de tu pecho, que es el santuario de tu divinidad y el tabernáculo de tu corazón. Cuídanos, Dios mío, por los pueblos y naciones poderosas. Perfora tu dulce y misericordioso pecho con la más afilada de las espinas. Nuestros enemigos insultan nuestra fe, nos ridiculizan por la esperanza que hemos puesto en ti. Convierte a todos los hijos de Ecuador con tu gracia. Coronalos con tu gloria en la eternidad, para que el mundo entero, al contemplar con santa envidia nuestra verdadera felicidad y buena fortuna, los pueblos y las naciones también se refugiarán y dormirán tranquilos en la calma de la paz, en tu amoroso corazón que tú ofreces al mundo. Esa fuente pura y símbolo perfecto de amor y caridad. Amén. Maple syrup number 288. Wow, dang.
Last time it was 287.
Very good. 288. Sweet. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting close to 300 episodes. Today is on arguably the most Catholic president in world history, Gabriel Garcia Moreno. And that's all we're going to talk about today is his presidency. President of Ecuador in the 19th century. I started the video because today is April 8th, the eclipse that we are thousands of miles away from totality. And Brad and I were talking before the class that I filmed this eclipse. I had my glasses on, I filmed it, and unfortunately I got a cool photo of the sun, like footage of the sun, but not with a little hemicycle, 40% coverage or whatever it is, so woe is me. But nonetheless, Gabriel Garcia Moreno, born 1821, dies in 1875, an Ecuadorian politician, president of Ecuador, serves twice, but not consecutive terms. His first term in office actually is during the American Civil War. He is president of Ecuador between 1861 and 65, and then a 4-year break, 69 through 75, he is assassinated in his second term after being elected to a third term. Now, I'm going to go throughout the course of this class, throughout his story and talk to you about it, but let me kind of freestyle talk to you about him before we even get started. Like, why did I begin by saying that he's arguably the most Catholic politician of all time? Well, you can start off by saying the fact that he is the first Catholic politician to consecrate his country to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, I guess says it all. A couple decades after his assassination, the country will be consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of Our Lady, the Immaculate Heart of Mary as well. Moreno was opposed to many of the kind of like trendy movements of his time, whether they be avowed liberalism, Marxism, different variants of socialism. We know Karl Marx writes his famous Das Kapital, Communist Manifesto, 1848. So already in his lifetime, these ideas are trickling down throughout the world, not just in, European politics. He's known for his kind of, extreme arch conservatism, and that's said both by his supporters and his detractors. And of course, it depends where you fall on this line. His supporters are like, he's conserving all the best parts of traditional stuff. His detractors will label him a dictator and authoritarian. It goes without saying, I think, and I'm never going to tell you what to think. The only thing I'll ever, put my name to is I am a practicing Catholic. So help me God. God help me be a good one. I'm not going to tell you whether to support conservative or liberal politicians or whatever. Moreno does a really good job. Even his detractors admit that. In the realm of public health, public education, there's some kind of number like where there's a couple hundred people in school, basically in Ecuador, like throughout the entire country. This is 19th century. In some places, like post-Civil War, towards the fin de siècle in America, you're getting towards compulsory public education, that kind of thing. Education generally the world over is kind of, what you can get at home, and then elite schools, right? Think about the well-to-do, wealthy families. Think about the tradition of Eton and the British royal family, and then on, obviously, to higher studies at Oxford and Cambridge. And this is true the world over. The royalty and the kind of upper crust intelligentsia of societies are well educated, but by and large, the populace often are going to be farmers, blue collar people who will be lucky if they have a 6th grade education, maybe, let's say. Moreno's going to improve public education, the roads, hospitals, seems to push the country very much in the right progressive direction if you're going to go by GDP and whatever kind of stuff. People who don't like bureaucracy today will like him. He eliminated a bunch of kind of needless offices and therefore was able to redirect money in different places. If you are a bureaucrat, you're not going to like him. I like my needless office. I like we just push papers around, whatever. Again, I'm not going to tell you how to think about him. But let me go and give you his story now, kind of from the beginning and through. He just arguably is the most Catholic president, the most avowedly Catholic president ever. Is a president and yet has ideas very much in common with kind of like medieval monarchs in a certain sense. Very much about, and as Americans, how dare you even mention this? As Americans, separation of church and state and that kind of thing. Moreno would say, no, the church and the state must function as one, kind of like the body and the soul, the church and her morality informing the structures of the state. This is absolutely unacceptable to modern democratic American political thought on whatever end of the spectrum. Moreno would say to that, sorry, not sorry whatsoever. Let's talk about his story. He's born in 1821 to a noble family, a wealthy aristocratic family descended from the first kind of conquistadors, conquerors, Spaniards in this era in what is modern day Ecuador. His father is involved in the shipping business, but involved as a kind of like, this is very much an anachronistic term. There is no such thing as angel investor back then, but in the investment management, kind of putting up funds, leadership type situation. He's not a longshoreman working on the docks or whatever. He is raised by a devoutly Catholic mother. His father tragically dies when Moreno is young. He studies theology and law at the University of Quito. And at first he thinks, I might have a vocation to the priesthood. He does not. Instead, he pursues a career in law. A lot of our modern politicians running for office, seems the two kind of main things a politician needs to possess to run for office, he or she, is military service and that JD, right? Juris Doctor. Moreno is admitted to the bar in 1844. Remember, he's born in 1821, so 23 years old. And after that, he pursues a career, interestingly, while being able to be a practicing lawyer as a journalist as well. So, and once more, again, his name is simple enough, but for everyone in class and just in general, because the name is going to be, of course, on the YouTube video, but Gabriel Garcia Moreno. Gabriel, like Gabriel. Garcia, spelled exactly as you assume. Gabriel Garcia Moreno, Moreno. Gabriel Garcia Moreno. Lawyer and a journalist, he opposes the liberal government in power. Remember, when he comes to power, his two presidencies, 1861 to 65, a 4-year break, 69 to 75, very conservative, traditional, avowed, devoutly Catholic figure. Already in his youth, he opposes the general liberal ideas of the time. We're not talking about, obviously, modern Republicans and Democrats and all that kind of stuff. That, of course, does not apply whatsoever to the situation of 19th century Ecuador. What does apply is the 1848 revolution. The 1848 revolutions are still so unknown in history. It's very sad because they're overshadowed on bookends by way more famous ones. The French Revolution of 1789 and then the Bolshevik Russian Revolution of 1917. The revolutions of 1848 are just French Revolution stuff. What is the French Revolution slogan? Liberty, fraternity, equality. It's anti-clerical, power to the peasants, commoner, down with the priestly class, the first and second, estates, the estates general, tennis court oath, power to the third estate, the 99%, remake society, year one, and pretty soon French Revolution becomes just overtly, avowedly blasphemous, with desecration of Notre Dame Cathedral and just awful with the guillotine, to which, surprise, surprise, the main terrorist of the terror in the 1790s, Robespierre, also gets his head cut off, because those who live by the sword shall die by the sword. The 1848 revolutions are nowhere near as bloody as the French Revolution, not even close, but you do have barricades in the French capital. You have young Italy, Giuseppe Mazzini, Garibaldi, these people trying to take power away from the Pope, to constrict the Pope's temporal power, Pan-Slav conference in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Moreno sees this firsthand. And so Moreno says, again, I'm not judging. I am so left-wing, it's insane. I'm so much to the right, no comment. Remember, the one thing I'm going to talk about, me personally, me, Groshin, Khrushchevsky, it doesn't matter at all. I'm just here to state the facts. I'm not telling you how I feel about these ideas. How Moreno feels about them is he's horrified. He's horrified at all liberal ideas. The 1848 revolution for him doesn't just represent the liberal ideas of freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, expanding suffrage, expanding voting rights, things that all Americans, love, right? It's great. Yeah, voting, free speech, definitely. He sees kind of like anti-God, anti-clerical, anti-authority stuff, communism, and pretty soon we're going to get to cutting people's head off in the city square like Robespierre did. That's how he interprets this. So that's some of his kind of background. Young man, journalist, thinks he has a vocation to priesthood. No, I don't. Becomes a journalist and a lawyer, spends a couple years in Europe where he's exposed firsthand to the ideas, the real action. He's there during the revolutions of 1848. His anti-liberal posture becomes all the more ensconced, becomes more wedded to, like, I'm a conservative. He comes back to Ecuador, starts writing essays in opposition to liberal government. He founds a journal called La Nación in 1853, which needs no translation, but of course I'll provide it. It just means the nation, obviously, right? La Nación. Starts writing against the liberals who have power in the Ecuadorian government at this time. The liberals want to have separation of church and state, curtail church power. Often liberals are associated with different Masonic lodges. A lot of anti-Catholic ideas, to which, of course, Moreno, having grown up already opposed to anti-Catholic liberalism, becomes more and more entrenched against it. Coming back to Ecuador, he's going to found this journal, La Nación. Remember, he's a journalist publishing essays against the liberal spirit of that time. He's early 30s at this time. It's worth noting, while Moreno was abroad in France, and Barb, welcome, we're talking about arguably the most Catholic president in world history today, Gabriel Garcia Moreno, who is president of Ecuador in the 1860s and in 1875. We're just getting started with the story now. All you missed was that He's admitted to the bar and is a journalist and is pretty staunchly conservative his whole life. And really becomes so witnessing the very liberal, bottom-up, power to the people 1848 revolutions in Europe. Moreno, while he's in Europe, develops a deeper devotion to his faith too. Remember, he comes from a devout Catholic household, but he really becomes like super devout, getting to when he comes of age in France. I opened this episode from my basement, the preamble, before we got to the class, reading from his rule in life. I encourage anyone who wants to go back and watch this video later to see that opening. He talks about 10 things that he would hold himself to daily. So he starts becoming pretty kind of ardently Catholic in France. Listen to what is said about his time in France. This is from Charles Colomb, who wrote an essay called The Quest for a Catholic State. Colomb, in Quest for a Catholic State, this essay, quotes this Frenchman, Louis Veillot, about Moreno. Quote, "In a foreign land, solitary and unknown, Garcia Moreno made himself fit to rule. He learned all that was necessary for him to know in order to govern a nation formerly Christian, but now falling fast into an almost savage condition. Paris, which is at once a Christian and a heathen city, is the very place where the lesson he needed would be best acquired, since the two opposing elements may there be seen engaged in perpetual conflict. Paris is a training school for priests and martyrs. It is also a manufactory of antichrists and assassins. The future president of Ecuador gazed upon the good and the evil, and when he set out from his home afar, his choice was already made." End quote. So yeah, he sees, okay, I mean, like, my life is going to be this French revolutionary thing of, am I for Antichrist? Am I for not the kingdom of God in perpetuity, God's kingdom in heaven, but also Christ's kingship on earth? Or am I for revolution, rebellion, whatever? While in Paris, he starts attending Mass every day, praying the Rosary daily, confessing once a week. Gabriel Garcia Moreno, president of Ecuador during our Civil War, 1861 to 65, and then his second term, 69 to 75, would keep these habits the rest of his life. Imagine if our president, Biden, or Trump, or previously Obama, or whoever the next president is, but was known for frequently doing Eucharistic adoration, attending Mass daily, praying the Rosary daily, confessing once a week, we would say that man is very much a devout Catholic beyond any discussion, beyond any kind of like, well, it depends, liberal, conservative. Like, it would just be anyone who attends daily Mass, prays the Rosary daily, confesses once a week. And Gabriel Garcia Moreno, remember, he's assassinated in 75. He's assassinated when he's pulled away from Eucharistic adoration. Like, someone says, you're urgently needed somewhere, and he comes outside and gets killed. Like, he's doing adoration. Like, this guy is constantly, making himself fit above all for the kingdom of God. He likes the Jesuits. During his time in office, he's going to invite the Jesuits to Ecuador to basically do the education. The Jesuits are amazing educators. The Society of Jesus is a very intellectual society, very intellectual branch within the church. I would say the Jesuits really, I don't know if rivalry is the right word, but like in terms of competition, other orders, the Dominicans are very intellectual, the order of preachers, right? St. Thomas Aquinas. But the Jesuits are certainly up there. So Moreno, remember, in Paris, forms these religious habits, was devout, becomes more devout, was conservative, becomes more conservative, comes back to Ecuador in 1853. This is now 8 years before he'll become president the first time. And he's a lawyer and a journalist, founds the journal La Nación, The Nation, and starts just railing against the liberals in power who want to do separation of church and state and all their policies. When he comes to power in 1861, he's going to inherit a country with a treasury basically empty, threadbare, enormous debt. The first thing he does is start firing people. We said earlier, like if you like bureaucracy, if you like a bunch of, I love being a useless functionary of the state. I get paid well. You're not going to like this guy. You're going to hate this guy. He's an evil dictator who fired me for no reason. But what did you do? Well, I have to admit, it was nothing. I was just sucking up public funds. He starts firing people, raising money, and he starts doing this thing called the trabajo subsidiario, the kind of subsidiary work tax. Trabajo, obviously, work, right? Subsidiario, same word, subsidiary, right? Voluntary contributions, revived in 1854. It starts requiring every citizen contribute 4 days of unpaid work to the state, or its monetary equivalent, to promote the nation's public work projects. This trabajo subsidiario is every citizen is required to contribute 4 days of unpaid work to the state in the course of a year, or its monetary equivalent towards public work projects. Catholic economics, I can't say this enough. I'm serious. I want everyone right now watching online, all of my millions of viewers, my billions of viewers. Actually, I don't know how this is possible. We have trillions of viewers, not even that many people on the planet. I guess people in outer space are watching this show too. People watching in other galaxies. I want you to go right now, or being, I'm sorry for calling you people, aliens, whatever, green dudes. I want you to pause right now and go read Rerum Novarum. I want you to read 2 things, actually 3 things. The 3 great papal encyclicals on Catholic economics. 1891, Rerum Novarum by Leo XIII. Quadragesimo Anno by Pius XI. That means 40 years later, 1931. And then 100 years later, Centissimus Annus by John Paul II. Rerum Novarum Quadragesimo Anno Centissimus Annus. It makes clear the church does not ally itself with capitalism or communism. Now, a lot of people, and recently will say, the church says communism is worse than capitalism. Yeah, maybe, that's not incorrect. If you have to pick the lesser of 2 evils, it seems the church will often say communism is more problematic. But the church has always been a kind of third way, this kind of distributist policy. The church has never been just about the free market. Where the church is anti-communist very, very much is the church is against the exploitation, kind of kickbacks, cronyism, one state, big daddy type stuff. But where capitalism often runs into problems is, well, the market will just balance it, the state should totally stay out. The Catholic economic policy has always said, if you have a good leader, and Moreno hopefully is a good Catholic leader who has an understanding of how to create conditions of true social justice, the state should be involved in mobilizing citizens to do stuff for the glory of God. So again, this is Moreno. He is viscerally anti-communist. Find your most right-wing friend who hates communism. He doesn't hate communism as much as Moreno did. And yet Moreno is making people work for the state. Well, because he's saying, because this is the Catholic state, this is this kind of corporatist, we're all in it together. Integralism, you could even say, talk about a dirty word. How dare you? Integralism, the idea of the church and the state working as one organ, as we saw in the Middle Ages. Garcia Moreno, once he takes office, remember 61, demands control of the revenues of tax in order to direct funds towards major projects. He diverts funds from local stuff into national things, starts creating a huge road system, improving hospitals, reforming universities. He has a new military school built, and again, the primary school system goes up by 2.5. When he takes office, there's 200 primary schools in Ecuador. Then it's 500 right away. He doubles it plus another half. But the number of primary students is even more impressive. It's by 400% increase. When he takes office, there's only 8,000 primary students. There's 32,000 as he's getting going in these reforms. And again, a lot of these students being taught in the public schools are being taught. Garcia Moreno's public is Catholicism. What are you guys talking about? Again, this guy is, to liberals of today, he's so offensive. He's so authoritarian dictator. How dare you? No separate church and state. To people on the right, they're probably could he be any more based? I mean, he's so based. He's so this is exactly the kind of rooted leadership we need. Today in modern Ecuador, you can ask people oh yeah, he's very controversial. Tell me what you like. If you like better roads, better school, better medicine, more students in schools, better infrastructure, less corruption. He was very anti-corruption. When I hear anti-corruption was, there was once a disaster, an earthquake, and Moreno goes visit this bumpkin middle of nowhere town. And there's a guy there selling water. like extorting people. And Moreno has him publicly whipped in the square. And that doesn't happen again. Surprise, surprise. He's like, this is unacceptable. He's like, this is anti-Christ behavior. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. Matthew 25 says, here's your poor countrymen who their water supply has been ruined by the collapse of the waterworks and this damage of the earthquake, and you're going to charge them money? Oh, it's the market. They'll pay for it. He has him publicly whipped. Like Moreno, this is why people hate him. Now see, I love that, because that is evil to have people who are thirsting, gonna die from thirst, to charge them, exorbitant amounts for water. Yeah, I know you're thirsty here, $250 for this Aquafina bottle. That's disgusting and evil. That's disgusting behavior. So I'm glad that guy was whipped. But notice too, the restraint. The French revolutionaries, their enemies, they beheaded, 100,000 people at a time and threw their bodies in the river in guillotines. He doesn't kill this guy. He doesn't execute him. He just has him whipped. But he sends the message, right? So even in that, there's some kind of like his firm hand, but he doesn't go, okay, you're doing this water, we're going to shoot you and burn the village down. No, right? This is why his opponents, though, don't like him. They feel like he's a dictator who's involved in every last bit of life. Yeah, our roads got better. Yeah, medicine. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. But we have to do prayer in school. And he just, makes everyone do everything. He's portraits everywhere. And this is disgusting. I'd rather be living in a slum and at least be free. This guy's curtailing my freedom. That kind of, this is, again, I'm not going to tell you how I feel about this at all. Like I said, as always, I'm only going to tell you that may God help me be a good Catholic. But I'll let you make up your mind if this is good or not. If like better sanitation is good or no. You tell me what you think. People like him. Surprisingly, his conservative party that he founds in 1869, this is when he goes into his second year in office. Remember, he's in office 61 to 65, 4-year break, then 69 through 75, elected to a third term, which is cut short by being assassinated, as you mentioned earlier. He's very popular with peasants, landowners, really the people in general. The people in general are like, this is awesome that our kids get a good education from all these priests that have been imported. Medicines is better than ever. We have stability. He was, even his opponents would admit, he was very anti-corruption, anti-cronyism. Who hates him? The people on the left then, the liberals, who are like, we've been trying forever to have a separation of church and state. This guy consecrates the country to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Wow. In fact, people say he's the first president ever to do that in world history. Wow. People say that was the final straw for the Masonic left opponents. They're like, once he did that, they're going to kill him. So, those people don't like him. Not everyone likes him, but a lot of people do. And a lot of people look at him like, this is maybe not perfectly appropriate to say a Robin Hood figure, but they kind of look at him like, well, okay, he has a lot of power concentrated in his own hands. He's deciding a lot of these things, even like tax revenues, and he's personally distributing like a king. That's why people on the left hate him so much. Down with kings, right? How dare this guy, president, want to make himself like a czar emperor? His supporters will say, yeah, he's a czar emperor, but man, never had cleaner water, better roads, less corruption, more prosperity, and my kids now can read and they're in school. And the final straw, people think, towards assassination is, again, him consecrating the country to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. I'm going to read this consecration to you. Long stuff here. Apparently, indeed, as the church has pronounced, I say apparently of like, I never want to give false information. Apparently, this is part of this apparition. The apparition is 100% true. The apparition has been 100% attested to by the church as its veracity, amen, and period. I think part of this apparition, when Christ comes to St. Mary Margaret Alacoque, he gives her the devotion to the Sacred Heart. I highly recommend it. There's beautiful, like white pamphlets. You do a litany to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, finished with the divine praises. Blessed be God, blessed be his holy name. As part of this apparition of Christ to this nun, Mary Margaret Alacoque, he tells her he wants the French king to consecrate France to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. The French king doesn't do it. What happens 100 years later? He's executed, right? A lot of people have drawn parallels, say the real reason for the outbreak of the French Revolution in 1789 is France's rejection. It's the eldest daughter of the church, rejection of his Catholic identity. Christ told Mary Margaret Alacoque, I want you to tell the king at that time was Louis XIV, in 1689. I want you to tell the king to consecrate the country to my sacred heart. And the king, the famous Louis XIV, the Sun King, l'état moi, I am the state is me. The state, that's me, full centralization of power, refuses to do so. The Bible tells us all the time, if we won't have God for our king, we'll be left to our own devices. And people ought to say the real outbreak for the French Revolution, the cause amongst the myriad, manifold, the harvest failure. Jacques Necker in 1786 telling Louis XVI, the treasury is empty, funding the American wars, the revolution. All the different factors, play a role, but this is a huge factor. If Christ tells you to do something, we should do it. Sounds very obvious enough. So Moreno's like, I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm going to consecrate my country to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. He does so on March 23rd, 1873. In the Cathedral of Quito, before the Blessed Sacrament on the high altar of the cathedral. Imagine President Biden giving a speech after doing public Eucharistic adoration, or Trump. It's like, that's the level of Catholicism and presidency linked here. It would be shocking to Americans. First, for a lot of us, practicing Catholics, would be beautiful and amazing. To others, enraging, tell me where you stand on your relationship to the faith. It would very much be outside the norm, right? Moreno consecrates the country to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and then the Archbishop of Ecuador reads the following prayer. I'm going to read to you the whole thing. Lord, this is thy beloved country. Always, my Jesus, we will recognize thee as our God, and we never turn our eyes from this star of love and mercy that glows in the midst of thy breast, which is the sanctuary of thy divinity, the tabernacle of thy heart. Watch over us, my God, for powerful people and nations pierce thy sweet merciful breast with the sharpest of thorns. Our enemies insult our faith, they ridicule us for the hope we have placed in thee. Nevertheless, this is thy beloved country. Thy leader, thy lawmakers, thy clergy, console thy priests. Wipe away the tears of the church. Confound the impious and apostates of this world. They may become lost in thy ocean of love and charity, so they may discover thy gentle heart. Just pause for a second. How awesome is that? In this prayer, that's Christian love. Confound the impious, not drop lasers on them. Confound the impious that become lost, not in a hole somewhere, not down with them, but love. They may be lost in the ocean of thy ocean of love and charity, so they may discover thy gentle heart. That's beautiful, right? To our enemies, I hope you get punished by repenting and being just as happy as we are. It's true, willing the good of the other. Back to the prayer. Because you are our God, may thy heart be the beacon of light of our faith, a safe anchor for our hope, the emblem of our flag, the impenetrable shield of our weakness, the dawn of our serene peace, the intimate law of our holy agreement, that the cloud that illuminates our horizons, the inspiration of our wealth that results in prosperity and abundance. We may raise churches and altars where thy holy and magnificent glory will shine with infinite and peaceful splendor. And because we have consecrated and abandoned ourselves without reserve to thy divine heart, multiply without end the years of our religious peace. Banish impiety, corruption, misfortune, and misery to the borders of our mother country. May thy faith dictate our laws. May thy justice govern over our courts. Maintain and direct our leaders thy mercy and strength. Perfect our priests thy wisdom, sanctity, and fervor. Convert all the children of Ecuador with thy grace. Crown them with thy glory and eternity, so that the whole world, when contemplating with holy envy our true happiness and good fortune, people and nations as well, will take refuge and sleep soundly in the calm of peace in thy loving heart which thou dost offer to the world, that pure fountain and perfect symbol of love and charity. Amen. With holy envy. Yeah, it's awesome. We're praying that's so American too. Going back to John Winthrop's City on a Hill, 1636, America will be a shining light, city on a hill. Presidents from Biden to Trump to Obama to every JFK have talked about America as a shining city on the hill. That's what he's saying in his prayer. With holy envy, people, nations like take refuge and sleep soundly in the calm of peace in thy loving heart which thou dost offer the world, that true fountain and perfect symbol of love and charity. He's killed shortly after this. Some people say this is the reason he's killed. This is a step too far. How dare this guy? It's already bad enough that he gave us clean water and good schools. Down with it. I want my dirty water back now. I want local corruption. Okay, that guy that was whipped for selling $200 bottles of water, I'd do 2,000. All right, let them die of thirst. Bring that stuff back. This guy's the worst. It's bad enough, being serious now in the critique, the liberals would say, it's bad enough this guy's a dictator and he's involved in every ounce of our life. He's telling everyone what to do. And he's having Catholic law influence all parts of society when I want it to be secularism, separation of church and state. Vive la révolution, right? You know, the French Revolutionary liberty, fraternity, equality, ideals. I want that. It's bad enough this guy's violating all those promises of 1789, 1848. This is the final kind of straw. And indeed, kind of, you know, it is, right? Christ says in the scriptures, you'll be hated because of my name. Like, this is the ultimate unacceptability to people. Moreno knows he's going to be assassinated. He's going to be inaugurated to his third term on August 30th, 1875. Remember, he's 61 to 65 break, 69 to 75 is the back end 6 years of his presidency, including getting ready for this third term. He actually writes to Pope Pius IX. I wish to obtain your blessing before that day, so I may have the strength and light which I need so much in order to be unto the end a faithful son of our Redeemer and a loyal, obedient servant of his infallible vicar. Now that the Masonic lodges in neighboring countries, instigated by Germany, are vomiting against me all sorts of atrocious insults and horrible calumnies, now that the lodges are secretly arranging for my assassination, I have more need than ever of the divine protection, so that I may live and die in defense of our holy religion and the beloved republic which I am once more to rule. He's called out, doing adoration, called out, you're needed somewhere, a bunch of assailants meet him on the steps. He's cut 14 times by a machete, including having his right hand cut off, and shot 6 times. But this guy's so boss, as he's dying, he yells, Dios no muere. God does not die. Basically telling his assailants, like, you guys can kill me, it's fine. You can't kill God. Who you really want to kill is God. You're mad about God. You're mad that Christ is king. You're angry that God is in charge. You hate God. And you hate me because I'm God's servant. Dios no muere. God does not die. Just because you kill me doesn't mean you're going to kill this movement. And yeah, I consecrated the country to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. That's eternal. There's nothing you can do about it. You know that. And you're taking out your anger on me, killing me. God doesn't die.
So you said that this was done by Germanic Masons?
He's claiming it's instigated by Germany. That I'm not 100% sure. Definitely Masons. And Masons being opponents of Catholics, obviously, because Masons want to set up a parallel. It's why the church has always condemned Freemasonry. In the lodges, this, pledging to a supreme being and like all religions are equal. Just deny that Christ is the sole way to the Father, that Christ is the Messiah. It doesn't matter what you believe, as long as you believe in some kind of force, and it's about the leveling of all kind of like distinctions and stuff. Where Catholicism obviously is about exclusivity, and Christ died for all, but Christ alone is the narrow gate. So Catholics and Masons have never ever mixed. In fact, I think that the church has officially condemned Masonry more than anything else throughout its kind of history. So Masons, Masonic lodges kill him. I always want to speak correctly and never give false information. Oh, I think so. He's claiming that to Pius, the Germans are behind. Is that true? I don't know. That just might be paranoia. I don't know if that's true. Moreno is a man of prophecy, though. This is crazy. So again, Moreno dies, the cathedral steps, assassinated. A lot of people think, it's in odium fide, in the hatred of faith. A lot of people call him a martyr. He's kind of like, he's killed because he's a Catholic. It's pretty obvious he's killed because of his presidency being about God, Christ, Christian law. It's all that's very upfront. It's not an incidental thing. Oh, he's a president. Yeah, we don't like these Catholics. It's a private matter. No, he's made a very public matter. All the public education is Jesuits. It's the Catholic Church. People hate that. His opponents hate that. So a lot of people say he's actually killed in odium fide. Anyone know about Our Lady of the Good Event or Our Lady of Good Success? Marian apparition 1599. 1599 predicts Moreno. In these, Our Lady talking to this nun talks about all the problems the world will have in the future. And again, private apparition, I tread so lightly. You saw my feet like on eggshells. Private revelation, no thank you until the church says it's good. That's why Fatima and Guadalupe are so important. The church has put her stamp of approval on it. But there are tons of fake stuff, whatever. This is an approved apparition by the church. The church has said is worthy of belief. With the Blessed Virgin Mary, under the title Our Lady of Good Success, but suceso, the Spanish word like event, Our Lady of the Good Event is the more appropriate. It's not the success like, money making business success we think of. An apparition in 1599, Nuestra Señora del Buen Suceso is the Spanish title. Nuestra Señora del Buen Suceso. 1599, talking about the future. And Our Lady tells us none, in the future there will be widespread moral corruption, profanation of the sacrament of matrimony, depraved priests who will scandalize the faithful and cause suffering for good priests, unbridled lust, which will ensnare many souls, loss of innocence among children, loss of modesty among women, lack of priestly vocations, a period of catastrophe, followed by a period of restoration. What do all these things portend and stuff? I submit that to God. What's very interesting is she tells the nun listening to this that a man of character whom God our Lord will give the palm of martyrdom on the square joining this convent of mine. He will consecrate the Republic of Ecuador to the Sacred Heart of my most holy Son, and this consecration will sustain the Catholic religion in the years that will follow, which will be ill-fated ones for the Church. The Blessed Virgin Mary tells this seer, this visionary in this apparition, Our Lady of Good Success, in 1599, almost 300 years, 270 years before this event, a man of character whom God our Lord will give the palm of martyrdom to on the square during this convent will consecrate Ecuador to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and this will be a source of strength going forward. The cool thing is, Our Lady tells this nun, in the 19th century, a truly Christian president will come. What's crazy about that? The nun would have no idea what is a president. It's 1599. There are no presidents then, right? What is a president? Like Praesidus in Rome, presider, president. Again, it's amazing to think about, heaven. Talk about Boethius describing God as living in the eternal now. We live in present, past, and future. Like God knows the whole thing. And so, of course, can, to the Blessed Virgin Mary and all the angels and saints, explore the plan. And God knows how all of the free choices of humanity will pile up in this entire narrative of everything. We don't. But how cool is that? In 1599, the Blessed Virgin Mary is not just talking about a good guy leader who will come and consecrate the country. Obviously, it's Moreno. Moreno does this consecration. No other person does this consecration to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. It's obviously him. But that she says, a good and holy president, as if to give us a breadcrumb of the veracity of this apparition. There are no presidents in the world. That woman representing this, or reporting this, would be like, I don't know what that means, president. Like, it would not be perhaps understood at that time, 1599, that president just means, king of a democracy, basically, right? Top leader. What is a president? Okay. Pius writes, he thinks, perhaps, Pius IX, that Moreno is a martyr. He writes, quote, in the midst of all this, the Republic of Ecuador was miraculously distinguished by the spirit of justice and the unshakable faith of its president, who showed himself ever the submissive son of the Church, full of devotion for the Holy See, and of zeal to maintain religion and piety throughout his nation. And now the impious, in their blind fury, look as an insult upon their pretended modern civilization, upon the existence of a government which, while consecrating itself to the material well-being of the people, strives at the same time to assure its moral and spiritual progress. Then, in the council of darkness organized by sects, these villains decreed the murder of the illustrious president. He fell under the steel of an assassin, as a victim to his faith and Christian charity. So for Pius IX, the Gabriel Garcia Moreno is certainly as well in odium fide, in hatred of faith, very much a martyr. We say, right, he started doing the devotions that he was known for during the entirety of his presidency already in Paris as a young man when he becomes confirmed in the path that he's going to take in his life. Even during his presidency, he's always doing Eucharistic adoration, the Rosary daily, weekly confession. He's very much kind of a, like him or hate him, even his opponents, like a walk the walk type person. He's not a person, I would never judge the veracity of Joe Biden's Catholic faith, really. I don't know. How pious he is or not, or Donald Trump. Does he believe in God or not? Obama, I want to follow the words of our Lord in the Bible, to judge no man. I think we can say with hope, Moreno seemed to be legit. We shouldn't judge, I think, good either. Like, I'm not saying, oh, he's the best guy ever. I don't know. I don't want to judge good or bad. I feel pretty comfortable with the extant evidence we have from Moreno, whether you hate his policies, his conservative policies, because you're a liberal, conservative liberal, all these scare quoted stuff, whatever, hard terms to define anyways. He definitely was a person who walked the walk. He's deserving of the title, most Catholic president ever. I assume most people in the room, people watching, most people have never heard of him. Have anyone heard of him before?
No.
Yeah, he's not very well known. Let me finish this thing here. It's a great place to finish the class, and God bless you guys, and see you next time. Here's a great place to finish the class. There's a novena for the canonization of Gabriel Garcia Moreno, Catholic President of Ecuador, put forth on January 21st, 1958, by Cardinal de la Torre, the Archbishop of Quito, with ecclesiastical approval, 300 days indulgence. So like an official church thing. This is not some kind of like personal fan of this guy or whatever. Here's the kind of prayer that I think does an interesting job encapsulating, talk about like a tombstone thing, an epitaph, right? O Holy Virgin of Lourdes, remember thy servant Garcia Moreno promised to defend thy Immaculate Conception. Remember that he belonged to thy sweet archconfraternity. Let me start and say this really quickly, I'll start over. That Ecuador is confirmed to the Immaculate Heart of Mary 2 decades after he's killed, consecrated. So Moreno is ultimate Catholic evidence beyond his personal piety, beyond his Christian behavior, beyond... I started this episode in the basement of my house. People in class, obviously we're not seeing this, but when you see the video later, reading from his regula. He had a rule of 10 things he'll do every single day. One including is like, I won't have any amusements till after 8 o'clock at night. Which sounds kind of like silly, whatever. No, it's like he kept himself to like, until 8 o'clock at night, I'm going to be all about the business of serving God and serving the state. Being better for my people and being better in the eyes of God. Beyond all that, I think the ultimate evidence of his just Catholicity is obviously consecrating the country to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. But 2 decades after his death, the bishops as well consecrate to the Immaculate Heart of the Blessed Virgin Mary. I mean, we know the idea of the triumph of the Immaculate Heart and the importance of the Immaculate Heart is Our Lady talks about at Fatima later on, much later on from this timeline, 1917. Reading with no interruptions from me. O Holy Virgin of Lourdes, remember that thy servant Garcia Moreno promised to defend thy Immaculate Conception. Remember that he belonged to thy sweet archconfraternity and that he fervently prayed the Holy Rosary. Pope Pius IX, who officially proclaimed thy exemption from original sin, declared that Garcia Moreno, quote, died a victim of our faith and Christian charity for his beloved country, end quote. O Holy Virgin, obtain for us the canonization of this exemplary ruler so that powerful men arise in works and words for the cause of the same faith in our beloved country. Finally, please grant this special intention, and if you're doing this novena, you make the prayer at the time, right? If it is for the good of my soul. Amen.